So Srila Prabhupada had a very successful visit to Surat. And from Surat, he had a short stopover in Bombay. And I'll begin by reading about Srila Prabhupada's visit to Surat. Chapter 5, Surat, December 15th, 1970 to January 3rd, 1971. The next stop for Srila Prabhupada and the World Sankirtan Party was Surat, a town in the state of Gujarat, home to over 500,000 people, which Prabhupada says was, quote, a city of devotees, end quote. He told us that the Gujarati people in general were extremely pious and would receive us very cordially. He wrote to Guru Das to come from Delhi and other devotees to come from Bombay. We would inundate the streets of Surat with glorious Harinam Sankirtan. I was thrilled with the prospects of this next adventure. The Mahabharata mentions Surat in its narration of the history of Krishna moving his cows from Mathura to Dwarka. On the way, they stopped in Surat, which at that time was called Suryapur, and the cows' footprints are said to still be visible at a pilgrimage site known as Gai Hagli, the feet of cows. Krishna used to stop there on his way to Dwarka, about 400 miles northwest, maybe 8 days by horse-drawn chariot. And to this day, the entire state of Gujarat is well known for its many worshippers of Krishna, especially in his form as a young cowherd boy, Balakrishna. Commercially, Surat is known internationally for its textiles and diamonds. Over 90% of the world's diamonds are cut and polished in Surat, and the silks manufactured there are considered among the best in the world. The city is also renowned for its silk brocades and gold embroidery, jari. Srila Prabhupada had previously met our host, Mr. Bhagavad Jariwala, in San Francisco in 1968, and Mr. Jariwala had invited Prabhupada to come to Surat with his Western disciples, to which Prabhupada had readily agreed. In a letter to Mr. Jariwala, dated October 16, 1968, Prabhupada had written, "All over Gujarat, there are so many Vaishnavas, So they should come forward to cooperate with me. Then it will be a very nice organization. So once when Srila Prabhupada was in Los Angeles, because he would often use this phrase, cooperate with me. So I asked him, what does it actually mean to cooperate with you? And he said, it means to follow my instructions. So in a letter to Mr. Jariwala dated October 16, 1968, Prabhupada had written, all over Gujarat, there are so many Vaishnavas, so they should come forward to cooperate with me. Then it will be a very nice organization. We want to establish one God, Krishna, one scripture, Bhagavad-gita, one mantra, Hare Krishna, and one work, service to the Supreme Lord. And people are responding. I thank you very much once more for your nice letter and appreciation of my activities. And if you kindly cooperate with me, I shall be still more encouraged. When we arrived at Mr. Jariwala's house, we found Prabhupada's letter placed under the glass of Mr. Jariwala's desk. Mr. Jariwala, his wife, and their adult son and daughter were wonderful, selfless people, tireless in their efforts to care for us, 20 or 25 of us in all, including treating our nearly continuous illnesses. The women ran the household with great efficiency. They opened up their main floor for the devotees to take prasad and preach to visitors, and gave Srila Prabhupada the entire second floor, a front room, a sleeping room, servants' quarters, and a balcony. The balcony turned out to be important, as masses of Surat citizens would clamor outside to get a glimpse of Prabhupada, and he would go out on the balcony to acknowledge them. The Jariwalas gave over their third floor bedrooms for the ladies and the fourth floor to the men. They themselves moved onto the roof. Virtually the entire building, known as Motorcycle House, was offered to accommodate Prabhupada and his World Sankirtan party. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 341, Srila Prabhupada describes his father's standard for receiving guests. Quote, according to the Vedic principles, there must always be a guest in a householder's house. In my childhood, I have seen my father receive not less than 4 guests every day. And in those days, my father's income was not very great. Nonetheless, there was no difficulty in offering prasadam to at least 4 guests every day. According to Vedic principles, a householder, before taking lunch, should go outside and shout very loudly to see if there is anyone without food. In this way, he invites people to take prasadam. If someone comes, the householder offers him prasadam. And if there is not much left, he should offer his own portion to the guests. If no one responds to his call, the householder can accept his own lunch. Thus, the householder's life is also a kind of austerity. End quote. Gujarati culture is particularly refined and pious. The Vedic conception that guests should be received and treated like God. And Mr. Jariwala and his family were perfect hosts. One of the main activities that brought us in contact with them was taking prasad. We took our noon and evening meals with Srila Prabhupada, breakfast by ourselves. The Jariwalas would set up nice plates for us. We would sit in lines on the floor, and they would personally serve us, kneeling down and offering us whatever we wanted. And after preparing and serving the whole meal for us, they would ask, "Is there anything else you would like?" Nanda Kumar Prabhu remembered, quote, none of them ever took any prasad until every one of us had been fully satisfied. Sometimes there was nothing left after our voracious appetites had been satiated, and still they would serve every last bit of it to us if we would accept. Often they would have to cook again for their family, sometimes many hours after their normal mealtime. End quote. The prasad itself was incredible, expertly prepared, flavorsome, and healthful. We could see how much Srila Prabhupada was relishing it. And when he particularly enjoyed a dish, he would ask the women to find out how it had been prepared. Yamuna Devi found ways to spend as much time in the kitchen as possible and watched the cooks closely and with appreciation. Mr. Jariwala even mentioned her interest to Srila Prabhupada. Quote, how Yamuna Devi loves to learn this cooking. Unfortunately, the rest of us were not so experienced in how to deal with respectable Hindu families. In Vedic culture, the guest should not impose on the host. But as Nanda Kumar said, quote, we were all young Westerners, still filled with Western habits, even though we were learning the Vedic culture and doing our best to apply it in our daily lives. End quote. So sometimes one of us would say, I want this, or I want that. And our host would cook another preparation. But we didn't know how to behave properly. And we were demanding more and more. The Jariwala family never indicated that they took any offense. They just humbly served with smiles on their faces. But eventually we started getting reports from Hansaduta, perhaps coming from Srila Prabhupada, that we shouldn't be so demanding of our hosts, that we should be better guests, and that whatever they offered us, we should accept respectfully and cheerfully, and then finish and go back up to our quarters. There had been a lot of talking after meals, and we had been hanging around downstairs. As it was, the hosts had already moved onto the roof to accommodate us. So if we hung around on the ground floor, there was no place for them to go. So we learned to be more considerate of our hosts. But finally, Hansaduta had to give a class to reform our uncultured manners. He taught us how to eat properly with only the right hand, how to behave properly, not to throw prasad. All the rules that we'd actually been taught when we first joined the movement, for which apparently some of us had never really learned or else had forgotten. Hansaduta appealed to us to please try to behave ourselves so that we didn't exasperate our hosts or create a bad impression of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada's manners, of course, were impeccable. As Madri Dasi observed, quote, one day he finished his lunch and the host gave him a whole banana. I never saw anyone peel a banana like he did. He didn't touch it at all with his left hand. He picked it up in his right hand and then, picking out the white part with his, he picked it up in his right hand and started to peel it with his teeth. Pulling the strips down with his teeth and then picking out the white part in the center. Then, pulling the white part away, he let the whole banana skin drop from his teeth. He did this all without touching it with his left hand. End quote. The day after we arrived was the disappearance day of Srila Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Prabhupada called us into his room to observe the occasion, which was momentous for him and for us. He had dedicated his Srimad Bhagavatam, quote, to Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, my spiritual master, on the 26th annual ceremony of his disappearance date. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. End quote. Prabhupada told us, on the absolute platform, the spiritual master's appearance and disappearance are the same. Both are beautiful, just like the sunrise and the sunset. Srila Prabhupada said that the Gujaratis were naturally Krishna conscious and gave the example that if a spark falls on dry grass, the grass will immediately burst into flame. The people of Surat were like dry grass, he said. and as soon as he arrived, they burst into flames of appreciation. We did Sankirtan in the streets practically every day. And wherever we went, everyone came out. There were no panda or formal programming, but Mr. Jariwala placed advertisements in the newspaper and had handbills distributed to announce our routes. And one day the mayor of Surat, Mr. Vaikuntha Shastri, proclaimed a public holiday, and all the schools and factories were closed so that everyone could come out and see the procession, in which the mayor himself greeted us and welcomed Srila Prabhupada, garlanding him. So this is a picture of one of the Harinam Sankirtan processions. In Surat. The entire city was excited and prepared, eagerly awaiting our arrival. Giant signs in Gujarati read, quote, "Welcome to the American and European devotees of Krishna," end quote. And quote, "Welcome to members of the Hare Krishna movement," end quote. The streets were lined with stalks of plantain and decorated with religious symbols and flower designs painted with rice flour. And different colored saris and strings of flowers and leaves were draped from one side of the street to the other. It was a spectacular, festive atmosphere. People had never seen sadhus before, and they lined the streets in thousands, running from all directions, standing on top of buildings, and clustering in windows to see us. Women threw flower petals from the rooftops as we proceeded, chanting Hare Krishna. And every half block or so, we would have to stop due to people approaching us to offer arati with flowers, incense, and lit ghee lamps, put kumkum on our foreheads, place garlands around our necks, and invite us to their homes. One day, we were stopped practically every few steps, and soon we had 10, 15, 20 garlands around our necks, and had to take them off and throw them back into the crowd, who would eagerly grab for them. Shamsundar and Saraswati were particular attractions. Shamsundar, so tall and handsome, and little 3-year-old Saraswati, with her blue eyes and blonde hair, clapping and dancing in the kirtan. In all, as Kaushalya said, quote, "Surat was very special. The whole town was surcharged with Krishna consciousness. Everybody welcomed us wherever we went. But in Surat, they welcomed us more than in any other place." End quote. Yamuna, like the rest of us, was in bliss. Quote, "It had been my desire from the beginning of my devotional life and I prayed for the day that I would be in India with Srila Prabhupada. So when he returned to San Francisco, he asked me if I still wanted to go to India. Tears immediately came to my eyes, and I said, yes, Swamiji, very much. But it wasn't until we actually came to India and walked and danced in the streets with Srila Prabhupada on Nagar Sankirtan that I realized something of what it meant. To walk in the footsteps of great Vaishnavas who chanted and danced in the streets before us, to be able to touch the hearts of people along the way with Harinam Sankirtan, were simply the most wonderful and nectarian things. Srila Prabhupada assured me that he would take me to the highest place, and for me, Nagar Sankirtan with Srila Prabhupada was that place. End quote. At first, Prabhupada joined our daily processions, and after a short while returned to Mr. Jariwala's house while we carried on. Then he stopped coming, but every morning as we were leaving, he would wave to us from his second-floor balcony, and thus enlivened, we would set off down the street, chanting with transcendental pleasure. And later in the day, when we returned, he would be out there again, waiting for us. Quote, Prabhupada was at the foot of the stairs greeting us, Chidananda said of a typical evening's welcome. We were in complete bliss, with flower garlands all over us and big smiles on our faces. We were very happy that we had been so well received. It was as if Prabhupada was standing there saying, quote, just see how wonderful this Krishna consciousness is. Just see how happy you are, end quote. He was standing there smiling. He was so happy that we were happy, end quote. Yamuna Devi wrote years later, quote, there was one Nagar Sankirtan that struck me in the heart just like lightning. It was the culmination and fulfillment of Srila Prabhupada's words. Our group of Sankirtan members had been informed that the next morning our Nagar Sankirtan would begin at 4 a.m. and proceed through some of the main streets of the town as it was awakening. We had gathered and were all walking through the streets, chanting very ecstatically. Hangsaduta Das led kirtan for an hour or so, and then I led. Revati Nandan Das also led for a while. It was wonderful. And after 2 hours, we were all decorated externally with many flower garlands, and internally with the glorious chanting of the holy names. Sometime between 6:30 and 7 a.m., all of the people were out building their morning fires, and a haze of smoke stretched lazily across the early morning sky. The sun was just beginning to peak above the horizon. And as we continued down the dirt road, it took a slightly upward turn that crossed a river. As the road became a bridge, we began moving toward the center. And just as we reached the center of the bridge, the sun rose across the trees, and Srila Prabhupada was standing in the dead center of the road with this light illuminating from all sides, just as if he were the rising sun itself. That picture is burned in my memory. It is still very emotional to think about it. There he was, with his hands raised and his robes draping on the ground, and he looked just like descriptions of Lord Chaitanya. He was so powerful and so beautiful. I remember all of the devotees simply went mad with ecstasy. First having this wonderful Nagar Sankirtan, and then seeing Srila Prabhupada in this surreal way. It was unbelievable. Then His Divine Grace personally walked through the streets with us and chanted on Nagar Sankirtan until about 8:30 a.m. We had this little bullhorn microphone system, and I was leading the kirtan at the time. Then Srila Prabhupada motioned for someone to get the bullhorn, and he began leading us in a new melody of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. We were simply transported. There is no other way to put it. Walking behind Srila Prabhupada, actually following in his footsteps as the party wound its way through the streets of Surat, was the promise, the fulfillment, the highlight, and the perfection. As we returned to the house each evening, hundreds of people would follow close behind, eager to see Srila Prabhupada. We would bathe and have prasad, and then we would jam into Prabhupada's front room with a crowd of Surat residents to hear him speak. Those guests who were unable to get in asked about ISKCON. Those guests who were able to get in asked about ISKCON and its activities, while those outside pushed to get closer. Sometimes the crowd around the house grew so large that traffic could not pass. One day, as the people's desire became stronger and more intense, Srila Prabhupada went out on the balcony. Hare Krishna, the crowd roared, their arms upraised, as Prabhupada greeted them. When he went back inside and they remained unsatisfied, he sent a few disciples down to try to pacify them. Several devotees went out, answered people's questions, and told them that they could see Prabhupada the next day. So, here's a picture of Harinam Sankirtan in Surat. And here's a picture of the crowd looking up at Srila Prabhupada and his balcony after a Nagar Sankirtan. There's a huge crowd followed us from the Nagar Sankirtan back to motorcycle house. And they all were eager to get a glimpse of Srila Prabhupada. Yamunadevi continued, one of the many benefits of all the Sankirtan we were doing was how tightly it bound our group together. Living and traveling together and chanting together for 7 hours every day. Our Sankirtan party was becoming tighter and tighter, and our relationships sweeter and sweeter. Through the heartbeat of it all, if you chant Hare Krishna for 7 hours a day, you're not in the material world anymore. End quote. Our stay at Mr. Jariwala's house was also remarkable because of how much close association we had with Srila Prabhupada, more than most of us had ever experienced. My policy was not to ask Srila Prabhupada a question if I thought I could answer it myself, unless I had really considered the question deeply and tried to get the answer by some other means, through introspection, chanting, reading, praying, or consulting with other devotees, I would not ask. But although I had contemplated many reasons why envy served no good purpose, and to the contrary, caused difficulties and was harmful to me, I could not understand how to make it go away. So I asked. First, Srila Prabhupada responded, can you think of any reasons not to be envious? I had thought of many, including that it was disturbing to my chanting and my relationships with other devotees. Further, I had reasoned that Krishna was unlimited and that his service was unlimited. So why be envious if someone else had service? Krishna could accept an unlimited quantity of service from an unlimited number of devotees. Someone else doing service was not going to deprive me of mine. And he could give unlimited mercy to an unlimited number of devotees. So if someone got some special mercy from Krishna, it wouldn't hurt my chances of getting some. So I replied, yes, I could think of many. Prabhupada continued, being envious means you don't like someone. That not liking should be directed against the demons who create so much havoc in the world and create disturbance to devotees. It should not be directed toward devotees. End quote. I appreciated the instruction. Another question I'd asked Srila Prabhupada during a break in a street program in Indore, at which I found myself sitting next to him on the stage, was about a verse that he often quoted. Dhruva Maharaj's words, Swamin kritarthosmi varam nayache. I am fully satisfied. I have no desires. When I asked him where the verse came from, Prabhupada had replied, I think from the Hari Bhakti Sudodaya. The words I think had struck me. I knew that Srila Prabhupada knew everything, and that the way he had said it was so gentle and humble. I also inquired from Prabhupada about hearing the Maha mantra, which we learned was the most important thing about chanting. How should we hear? I asked. And Prabhupada replied, just as I am hearing and you are speaking. There was no special trick or technique for hearing the mantra, I understood, except that you have to listen attentively. So there's quite a bit more. But for the sake of time, I think we'll move along. So we'll come to near the end. Quote, on the last day of our stay, Nanda Kumar later remembered, quote, Mr. Jaliwala asked if we could all gather in Srila Prabhupada's room. I remember it clearly and the powerful effect it had on me then and over the years. After giving each of us an envelope with a thank you card and 51 rupees, he said, quote, my family and I are so honored and blessed to have had the chance to serve all of you, especially your divine grace, Srila Prabhupada. Please forgive us for the many offenses we have committed against you. End quote. At this point, he began to cry, bowed down, and paid his humble obeisances to every devotee present. Srila Prabhupada looked at each of us, looking deep into our eyes and soul, and said very powerfully, quote, this is a real Vaishnava. He sees no faults, even though there may be many. You should all take his pure example and follow it as much as possible. End quote. On January 3rd, the day after we left Surat, Yamuna wrote in her journal, quote, Dear Vaishnav Sadhus Jariwalas, I do not know how to say how much I learned from your hosting of our party in Surat. I only know that it changed me. I learned so much from you that I hope to use in my service to my Guru Maharaj. How to serve selflessly, how to show the utmost humility at all times, how to tolerate sufferings and roughness, how to show concern and care for others at all times. I do not know if I can ever be such a Vaishnava as yourselves, but you are like a living university of how to serve. And I pray that 1,000,000 blessings are returned to you for your selfless service. Everything was simply the best. The cooking, I'm sorry if I made a nuisance of myself in your kitchen. The prasadam, the cleanliness, and most of all, you and your pure example of serving Krishna and the Vaishnavas. And then since we are in Juhu, I'll just read a little from the beginning of the next chapter. Chapter 6, Bombay, January 4th to 6th, 1971. In Surat, Srila Prabhupada had determined that he would go to Allahabad for the Ardha Kumbh Mela, but he wanted to stop in Bombay for a few days en route. 20 devotees went directly from Surat to Allahabad, and a few of us took a train to Bombay. On the way, we met a Surat factory owner named Mr. Kotak, who had a house in Bombay. We explained to him that we had no place to stay, and he invited us to his home at Chowpatty. We were all delighted. How wonderful India was, that wherever we went, we met such nice people who offered to take care of us. Srila Prabhupada arrived from Surat on the Flying Rane Express on the morning of January 4th. Shyam Sundar picked us up and rushed us to lunch at the home of a New Life member, Madan Lal Vakaria from Surat, who had a flat on Marine Drive. Mr. Vakaria had a record player, and Shyam Sundar brought George Harrison's latest record album, All Things Must Pass, which George had mailed to him for Prabhupada to hear. The Indian technology was a little primitive and the sound quality was poor, but Prabhupada smiled and seemed to relish every word as Shyam Sundar moved the needle to the tracks Prabhupada had inspired, such as, quote, awaiting on you all, end quote, and, quote, beware of darkness, end quote. Although Prabhupada couldn't understand many of the lyrics, he heard the Hare Krishna mantra chorus in My Sweet Lord, and went, oh, his eyebrows raised, smiling radiantly at all the devotees in the room. And then we had nice prasad. Mr. Kotak's place ended up not working out, so Gurudas, Shyam Sundar, and a few others of us went to meet Ramchand Chabria, who had known the devotees in England. As soon as we explained our difficulty, that we had no place to stay, he offered to put us up at his Sea Palace Hotel, which was vegetarian and didn't serve alcohol. So, yeah, some nice thing happened there, especially a very important discussion between Srila Prabhupada and John Greaser, who later was initiated as Yadubara Das. During that period, when we were at the Sea Palace Hotel in Bombay after Srila Prabhupada left, we received a new issue of Back to Godhead. And the first article was Prabhupada's poem, Marking Bhagavat Dharma, which he had written in Boston when he had first come to America. We had never seen the poem. It had never been published. So Gurudas, Yamuna, and I got together, and Yamuna read the poem out loud. It was written in a mood of deep humility and dependence on Krishna. And when she got to the end, quote, signed, the most unfortunate, insignificant beggar, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. She could no longer contain her emotions. She burst into tears. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Dancing White Elephants ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. So, my dear devotees, thank you for listening so patiently and attentively. And now, if any of you have any questions or comments, any reflections you would like to share, you can raise your hand. Yes. Yes, microphone is coming.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much. Yesterday we had Yadubara Prabhu with us. Very happy that you quoted about Yadubara Prabhu. I would like to know how you are feeling being in ISKCON Juhu, reading your own book in front of Radharasbihari, the story of Juhu. How you are feeling?
I feel wonderful. I feel fantastic. Happy to be here, happy to be with all of you, happy to read from the book, which expands the glory of Srila Prabhupada, and along with Srila Prabhupada, his dancing white elephants.
Thank you, Maharaj. So, one question that you said the devotee Prabhupada went in their house and he gave 51 rupees donation. And
Yes.
in return, Prabhupada, I think, if I heard rightly, Prabhupada said, may you return lot of blessings. May you get return lot of blessings. So my question, Maharaj, many times people ask blessings from devotees. So should we say that may Lord bless you, or they ask blessings from us? So what we should say? I will pray to Krishna, or I'll bless you. What should be our response?
Well, when people ask me for blessings, I usually ask, what blessing do you want? And then, depending on what blessing they want, I take it further. Because we have to assess the quality of the blessing they want.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
There's a story, story means an incident, when a man came to Srila Prabhupada, and it was towards the end. Prabhupada was upstairs here in his quarters, and the man asked Prabhupada for blessings. And Srila Prabhupada said, I have so many headaches, a worldwide movement, so many headaches, disciples, so many headaches, enemies, so many headaches. I have so many headaches. So if you want my blessings, you should take some of my headaches. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you very much, Maharaj. So, we could see that devotees from West had come first time almost, and then they had to deal with the change of culture and the way you were reading also that. So, how Prabhupada trained and devotees to kind of accommodate here.
Well, we had Srila Prabhupada's books, which gave many instructions on how to behave properly. And Srila Prabhupada would also personally guide us, like, don't eat with your left hand, eat only with your right hand. And so many things. And I think overall, Srila Prabhupada was pleased with how we adopted the Vedic culture. Some years later, in 1976, a publishing house in Bombay called Orient Longman was going to bring out a book called Gurus, God Men, and Good People. And there were maybe 12 chapters, and one chapter was to be about Srila Prabhupada. And the idea was that a follower of each of the personalities should write the chapter. So they approached me in Juhu, and I wrote Srila Prabhupada and explained the situation and asked how he wanted himself to be presented. And he replied through his secretary that that he had presented the Vedic culture as it is completely, and his followers had accepted it as it is completely. And he gave the example of a Tulsi sapling, like a beginning new Tulsi plant, that when you transplant a Tulsi sapling, you have to be very careful not to touch any of it or harm any of it or damage any of it. So in transplanting Vedic culture, I was very careful not to, distort or omit or add anything. I just presented it as it is completely, and they accepted it as it is completely.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, we have heard that Prabhupada once said, Giriraj is Bombay and Bombay is Giriraj. So, is that true, Maharaj?
Yes.
And my next question pertaining to that only, in what context, which was the context when he said that, and how do you feel now also and then also how you felt when Prabhupada uttered those statements, Giriraj is Bombay, Bombay is Giriraj?
Well, as you know, there is a great struggle here. First to get the land, then to get the permission to build, and then finally to build the temple. And so Prabhupada said that Giriraj is Bombay and Bombay is Giriraj. It's sort of echoing a statement about Napoleon. Napoleon is France and France is Napoleon. He said Giriraj is Bombay and Bombay is Giriraj. And he also said that Bombay is like Kurukshetra and Giriraj is like our Arjuna.
His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj Ki!
Yes. Hanuman Prabhu.
My question continues, Maharaj. How did you feel that time when Prabhupada uttered those statements?
How did I feel?
That time and now also, how do you feel by hearing this, again repeating this statement?
I felt humbled that Srila Prabhupada was giving me so much credit, which I wasn't sure I actually deserved. So I felt humbled and I felt determined that I must fulfill Srila Prabhupada's desires for truth.
Hare Krishna. I have one comment, Maharaj. That this Mr. Nair knew that Srila Prabhupada is a great saintly person, and still he gave so much trouble to Srila Prabhupada. And any other saintly person except Srila Prabhupada could have left this place without fighting. But Srila Prabhupada have done so much difficulty, took so much difficulty for serving Sri SriRadhaRasbihari. So we are indebted of Srila Prabhupada and all the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Right. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. If you permit, I would like to ask one more question.
Sorry?
If you permit, I would like to ask one more question.
Yes.
Yeah, in regards to Sundar Chaitanya Prabhu's question. So now we see that time it was a need-based that devotees, whoever was showing little interest, ISKCON has given a shelter to them, giving a space to stay, giving a food to eat. Now, how do you see after that we have got up so much, ISKCON society got so much popularity and so much standards we got now. Now, somebody having a duplicitous mentality, a newcomer coming with the duplicitous mentality, trying to cheat the inmates, at least newcomers. How do you suggest to go ahead with this duplicitous mentality with the newcomers?
Well, how do you know they're duplicitous?
We unfortunately we get to know myself. In my experience, I got to know after 1 week, 2 weeks of that I got cheated, or some newcomers got cheated with a blind faith. Duplicitous person, one who joined.
Cheated in what way?
So nowadays in youth preaching, Maharaj, when some people they show interest in the beginning, but we consider that is a very nice and we encourage him to stay, give a facilities in ISKCON. But that guy had other duplicitous ways to cheat people in the name of stock markets or investments, so and so. So how do you suggest us?
We should not allow them to stay here. Is that your question?
Yeah. How is there any instances which you faced in ISKCON Juhu being as a manager that any duplicitous people coming and got cheated others?
Oh, did I have any experience?
Yes.
There was one devotee, or so-called devotee, who did cheat or steal. And we asked Srila Prabhupada if we should inform the police. And he said no, because if we accuse him, in a way we're accusing ourselves because he was one of us. So, yeah, Srila Prabhupada was concerned that people, the police, shouldn't get a bad impression of us or the devotees. Yeah. He said to let it go.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. So as Srila Prabhupada said, Giriraj is Bombay, Bombay is Giriraj, and here is our Napoleon of Bombay, as Srila Prabhupada considered him to be. Let us thank His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj for his wonderful association and so many anecdotes and pastimes and instructions of Srila Prabhupada that he himself heard, imbibed, practiced, and is teaching now among all of us. So let us thank him from the bottom of our heart by loudly chanting Hare Krishna. So all those ecstasies and transcendental memories of Srila Prabhupada, Maharaj has recorded in his books. They are here now, like Many Moons and I'll Build a Temple. All those books are here. All the devotees are kindly requested, please pay visit to this stall and acquire these books. And I believe Maharaj will be signing over here. And not only he'll be signing, but he has a very sweet way to give a wonderful message on that first page of the book. I find it very rarely because many Maharajas, they may sign, but they find very rare time to give further messages. So kindly,
Brought my pen.
yes. So as Maharaj himself has written the book Many Moons, so here is a very unique moon which is shedding so many transcendental cooling rays, just like Narottam Das Thakur says, Nitai Padakamala Koti Chandra Sushitala. So he is shedding so many cooling experiences through Prabhupada's book, Prabhupada's dealings with him and Prabhupada's instructions to other devotees. And a very sweet way, just like the full moon of the Purnima, it gives very cooling rays to pacify our thirsty hearts. So I would like to request all the devotees kindly get those books and get some wonderful messages and blessings from Maharaj. And we, on behalf of ISKCON SriSriRadhaRasbihariTemple management and all the devotees, we thank Maharaj once again by loudly chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. We extend our again and again invitations to Maharaj not only once in a year but every now and then whenever his health allows him and his schedule allows him that he may come to RadharasbihariTemple. Not only that, Prabhupada already said, Bombay is Giriraj, Giriraj is Bombay. He can even stay over here and rather preach all over the world by going from here. So for that also we chant loudly, Hare!
Hare Ram.
Mission. Question. So Narottam has a question. Can we take Maharaj? Can you take?
Actually, I had my hand up here, but somehow the attention was that side. Maharaj, I have two questions. The first one, when you read about Yamuna Mataji reading the Markandeya Bhagavad Dharma, and then towards the end she broke down crying. So, because, and you said it was the first time that you all had read that poem. So, are there things even now about Srila Prabhupada that astonish you or surprise you? And or over the last few years, have there been? And if so, could you share something? And the other question is that sometimes it so happens that when we have a lot of close association of somebody senior, and if we are serving them, there is some familiarity that gets created. So what can be done to avoid that? Thank you, Maharaj.
Well, I mean, Srila Prabhupada's books are ever fresh and they're voluminous. So I always read things that strike me that I never read before, although I have read them before, but they just strike me as new and fresh. And yeah, familiarity breeds contempt. Yeah, we do need to be careful about becoming over-familiar. You know, Srila Prabhupada's secretary was, for many years, you could say, was Tamal Krishna Goswami. And Srila Prabhupada told him that whenever he comes in the room, he should offer obeisances. Even though he was going in and out of the room frequently, but by that offering of obeisances every time, it maintained like a humble and respectful mood. So yeah, we should be careful about that, becoming over familiar. Okay, thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, SriSriRadhaRasbihariTemple ki jai, Gaur Bhakta-vrinda ki jai, Hare Krishna. Jai.